in a bakery a few weeks back, the good kind, with the chalkboard sign out front and a girl behind the counter in an apron that's never once seen real flour dust. I picked up a loaf, deep brown crust, a few oats scattered across the top, a dusting of flour swirled on like somebody's grandmother had done it by hand. I turned it over to look at the price. $8 for a loaf of bread that weighed about as much as a paperback novel. I bought it anyway. Most people do. You tell yourself it's a treat, and you go on with your day. Now let me tell you what that same loaf actually costs to make in your own kitchen. From a bag of flour so plain and so cheap, most folks walk right past it without a second look. Plain flour runs about $1 a pound at most grocery stores, sometimes less if you catch a sale. One loaf of the kind of crusty, bakery-style bread you just paid $8 for takes about $1 worth of that flour. $1. That's the whole secret, sitting right there on the shelf, and nobody ever told you. That's all. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to turn one ordinary bag of flour into 5 loaves of bread that look and taste like they came from that bakery counter, for a total cost of less than $7 for all 5 loaves put together. 5 loaves. At $8 each from a bakery, that's $40 of bread, made for less than what you paid for that single loaf sitting in my kitchen right now. And before we're through, I'm going to show you the one thing I do to the dough that most people skip entirely, the thing that's responsible for that deep, dark, crackly crust bakeries are so proud of. That part's coming a little later, so stay with me. My name is Rosalie Jean, and I've been baking bread in my own kitchen for over 50 years now. Nobody taught me in a culinary school. My mother taught me, standing at a counter in a kitchen with linoleum floors, and she learned from her mother before that. I don't have a certificate on my wall. What I have is 50 years of hands that know dough by feel, and I'm going to share every bit of that with you today, dear. Now let's talk about why this works. Because once you understand it, you'll never look at a bakery loaf the same way again. Here's the thing, bakeries don't advertise. Bread, real bread, the crusty kind with the open, holy inside and the deep brown crust, is made from exactly 4 ingredients: flour, water, salt, and yeast. That's it. There's no secret proprietary blend. There's no machine you don't have access to. What bakeries are actually charging you for, mostly, is time and labor, not ingredients. Here's the plain English version of what's happening inside that dough. Flour is mostly starch and protein. When you mix that protein with water, it forms something called gluten, which is really just a stretchy, elastic web, kind of like a net made of tiny rubber bands. Yeast is a living organism, and when you feed it water and a little warmth, it eats the sugars in the flour and burps out carbon dioxide gas. That gas gets trapped inside that stretchy gluten net, and that's what makes the dough rise. That's the whole trick. It's not magic, it's just flour breathing. Here's the one-line version you could repeat to a friend at the grocery store. Bread is just flour breathing, and all you're doing is giving it time to breathe. Bakeries know this. They give their dough plenty of time. Most home bakers rush it because they don't know any better, and that's really the only difference between a store-bought loaf and a homemade one that falls flat. All right, dear, let's get into the how. I'm going to walk you through 5 things, and I want you to really sit with each one because every single one of them is doing real work. The first thing is measuring your flour properly, and this is where most people go wrong before they've even started. Here's a mistake I made for years without even knowing I was making it. I used to scoop my measuring cup right down into the flour bag, pack it down without meaning to, and level it off. Sounds harmless. It isn't. When you scoop that way, you can pack anywhere from 20 to 50% more flour into that cup than the recipe actually wants, and that extra flour is exactly why so many home loaves come out dense and heavy, like a brick you could use to prop open a door. My mother taught me a better way, and I still do it exactly like this 50 years later. You spoon the flour lightly into the measuring cup without shaking it or packing it down until it's heaping over the top. Then you take the flat back of a butter knife and sweep it across the top in one clean motion, letting the extra fall back into the bag. That's it. Light in, level off, done. For this recipe, you're going to want 3 cups of all-purpose flour, measured that light and level way I just showed you, plus a little extra for dusting your counter and your hands. 3 cups, not 3 heaping, packed down cups, 3 light, level cups. That difference alone is often the whole reason one person's loaf rises tall and another person's loaf comes out looking like a hockey puck, and both of them followed the exact same recipe on paper. The second thing is your salt, and I want you to really hear me on this one because people either forget it or they're scared of it. You need 1.5 teaspoons of salt for this loaf, not a pinch, not to taste. 1.5 teaspoons, measured properly, every single time. Salt does 2 jobs in bread, and most people only know about one of them. The first job is flavor, obviously. Bread without salt tastes flat and a little sad, like something's missing even if you can't say what. But the second job is more important, and it's the one nobody tells you about. Salt actually slows the yeast down. It puts a gentle hand on the yeast's shoulder and says, "Not so fast." Without that salt, your yeast works too quickly, eats through its food too fast, and your dough rises fast and then collapses before it ever sees the oven, leaving you with a sunken, sour-smelling loaf. With the right amount of salt, that yeast paces itself, and you get a slow, steady rise that builds real flavor along the way. I'll admit something to you here, because I promised you I always would. There was a stretch of years, right after my husband passed, when I stopped measuring my salt carefully and just started shaking it in by feel, the way you do when you've made something 1,000 times. My loaves got inconsistent. Some weeks beautiful, some weeks flat as a pancake, and I couldn't figure out why until my granddaughter, who was maybe 9 at the time, watched me shake salt straight from the box into the bowl and said, "Grandma, you're not even looking." She was right. I wasn't. So measure your salt, dear, every time. Even after 50 years, I still do. The third thing is the one most people have never even heard of, and it's the biggest secret on this whole list. It's called the cold, slow rise. Most recipes you'll find tell you to let your dough rise for about an hour in a warm spot, then bake it. That gives you bread, technically, but it doesn't give you bakery bread. Bakeries don't rush their dough. Many of them let their dough rest, covered, in a cold refrigerator for anywhere between 12 hours and up to 2 full days before they ever bake it. That long, cold rest is where the real flavor comes from. Remember what I told you earlier, that bread is just flour breathing? Well, the longer and slower you let it breathe, the more complex and rich that flavor becomes. It's the difference between a song someone rushes through and one somebody takes their time singing properly. Here's exactly what you do. After you mix your dough, which takes about 5 minutes and needs no kneading at all, just stirring with a wooden spoon until no dry flour remains, you cover the bowl with a plate or plastic wrap and set it in your refrigerator. Leave it there for at least 12 hours, though 18 hours is even better, and if you want to plan 2 days ahead, 48 hours works beautifully too. That's it. You're not doing anything. The cold is doing the work for you, slowing that yeast down so far that it takes its time, developing flavor the whole way through, the same way a good stew tastes better the second day. I remember the first time I tried this method, I was almost embarrassed by how little I had to do. My whole life, I thought good bread meant standing at a counter, arms deep in dough, kneading until you were worn out. Come to find out, some of the very best bread in the world barely gets touched by human hands at all. It just needs time and a cold spot to sit and think. The fourth thing, and this is the one I promised you at the beginning, the one responsible for that deep, crackly bakery crust, is baking your bread inside a covered pot. Here's the problem with a regular oven. Bakery ovens have something called steam injection. They pump a burst of steam into the oven right when the bread goes in, and that steam keeps the outside of the loaf soft and stretchy for the first few minutes, which lets it rise up nice and tall before the crust sets. Then, later in the bake, the steam clears out and the crust gets to turn deep brown and crackly. Your home oven can't do that on its own, but you can trick it, and this is the part that changes everything. You need a heavy pot with a lid, something like a Dutch oven, cast iron or enameled, it doesn't much matter which, as long as it has a tight-fitting lid and can handle high heat. Here's what you do. Put that empty pot, lid and all, into your oven and heat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. 450 degrees. Let that empty pot heat up right along with the oven for a full 30 minutes before you do anything else. That pot needs to be properly hot, not just warm, or this whole trick won't work the way it should. Once that pot is good and hot, carefully take it out and gently place your risen dough right inside it, put the lid back on, and set it back in the oven. Bake it covered, lid on, for 30 minutes. That covered pot is trapping the moisture that naturally comes off the dough as it bakes, and that trapped moisture is doing exactly what the bakery's steam injector does. It's letting your loaf rise up tall and open before the crust has a chance to set too early. After that first 30 minutes, take the lid off and let the bread bake uncovered for another 15 to 20 minutes until the crust is a deep, dark golden brown, almost the color of strong tea. This is where most people make their second big mistake. They see a beautiful golden crust after only 10 minutes uncovered, and they panic, worried it's burning, and they pull it out too soon. Don't. That deep color is exactly what you want. A pale loaf is an underbaked loaf, and it'll taste flat and a little gummy in the middle. Trust the color, not the clock, though somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes uncovered is a safe window to watch for that deep brown to arrive. The fifth and final thing, and it's the one nearly everyone gets wrong out of pure excitement, is that you have to let the bread cool completely before you cut into it. I know how hard this is. That bread comes out of the oven smelling like something out of a memory, and every bone in your body wants to slice right into it while it's still steaming. Please don't, dear, not yet. Bread is still cooking, in a sense, even after it comes out of the oven. The inside is still setting, the moisture is still redistributing itself through the crumb, and if you cut it too soon, you'll press all that steam right out, and what should be a light, airy, open crumb turns gummy and wet, almost like unbaked dough in the middle, even though it's fully baked through. Give it at least 45 minutes on a cooling rack before you cut it. An hour is even better, if you can manage the patience. Now, I promised you honesty, and here's where I give it to you. This cold, slow rise method, the one I just walked you through, makes the most wonderful, crusty, rustic, open crumb bread you've ever had. But it isn't the right tool for every job. If what you're after is a soft, sliceable sandwich loaf, the kind you'd use for a child's lunchbox, this particular method isn't going to give you that. Sandwich bread wants a different approach entirely, usually with a bit of fat and sometimes milk worked into the dough, and a shorter, warmer rise. This method is for the crusty, chewy, bakery-style loaf, the kind you'd tear apart with your hands and dip in olive oil. I don't want you trying to make school lunch sandwiches out of it and feeling like you did something wrong. You didn't. You just used the right tool for a different job. That's all. Now let's talk about what all of this actually adds up to, because this is the part that made me sit down and do the math myself. One 5-pound bag of all-purpose flour costs, on average, somewhere around $4, sometimes a little less if you catch a sale, sometimes a little more depending on where you shop. That 5-pound bag gives you enough flour at 3 cups a loaf to make 5 full loaves of bread, with a little flour left over for dusting. Add in your salt, which costs pennies, and your yeast, which runs you somewhere around 50 cents a loaf if you're using the little packets, or even less if you buy yeast in a jar. All told, 5 loaves of bread, start to finish, cost you somewhere around $6.50 in ingredients. $6.50 for 5 loaves. Now remember that bakery loaf we started with at $8 a piece. 5 loaves at $8 each comes out to $40. $40 of bakery bread made in your own kitchen for around $6.50. That's a savings of about $33.50 for the exact same 5 loaves made with your own 2 hands in your own oven with flour that costs about $1 a pound. But here's the part I actually care about more than the money, if I'm honest with you. It isn't just the dollars saved, it's the moment your family walks into a kitchen that smells like that and asks you what's baking, and you get to say, "I made bread today." There's a kind of pride in that no bakery receipt can give you, no matter how pretty their paper bag is. So here's your homework this week, dear, and I want you to actually do it, not just watch and nod along. I want you to buy 1 plain 5-pound bag of all-purpose flour, nothing fancy, whatever's cheapest at your regular grocery store. Mix up 1 loaf exactly the way I showed you, 3 cups flour, 1½ teaspoons salt, your yeast, and warm water, stirred together with a wooden spoon, no kneading required. Put it in your refrigerator overnight for at least 12 hours. Then bake it in a covered preheated pot at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 minutes covered, 15 to 20 minutes uncovered, until that crust turns deep golden brown. Let it cool for a full 45 minutes before you cut it, even though you won't want to wait that long. And when you do it, I want you to come tell me about it in the comments. Tell me what kind of flour you used and where you're baking from, because I love knowing whose kitchens this bread is ending up in all across the country and beyond. I read every single one of those comments myself, every one, so don't be shy about it. Next time, I want to show you the 1 ingredient swap that turns this same basic dough into something that tastes like it came from an old world Italian bakery, and I'll walk you through exactly how much it saves you over a loaf of the real thing. That one surprised even me when I first worked out the numbers. Until then, dear, keep your flour measured light, keep your dough patient, and always, always let your bread rest before you cut it. This is Rosalie Jean, and I'll see you in the next one.